This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
Kia ora, I'm Dr Barb and I'm here in the studio today with Dr Jeremy Dearlove, all the way from Durham, outskirts of Durham, the UK. And thank you very much for joining us here today, Jeremy.
You're welcome. Brilliant.
And Jeremy is a geologist, and he's done, technically I think now you're sort of specialised into geochemistry, but you've had a very well-rounded geological background there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I thought, seeing as you're visiting all the way from the UK, we would start with just sort of a general background of your education. So,
Okay, so started out doing geological sciences at a little place in Birmingham.
In Birmingham?
Birmingham, well, near, but it was Aston University at the time. So, did that and got really interested in minerals. Mineral exploration, gold exploration. Right. Everyone at the time was doing oil in the North Sea, so I thought, nah, not for me. I've got to get out somewhere. So I went out to Canada to do a master's out there.
Oh, so where in Canada were you?
So I was actually based at University of Waterloo.
Of Waterloo?
Yeah. So
I don't know that I even know that. Which side of Canada
It's Ontario.
Ontario.
It's sort of near Toronto, as they would say in the local vernacular.
Out there on the east?
Over on the east side, yeah. The small apple, as they call Toronto.
Oh, is that what they call it? The small apple?
It's the mini version of New York.
Yeah, and Toronto's an amazing city. It's got so many different ethnicities there and so many different cuisines there. I was really lucky. We went out there with some students from the Kura, years ago now, and they did a conference talk that the senior students did on the moth project that we've been doing. So we got to go on the trip there to Toronto. That's the only time I've spent in Canada. slash the whole of North America.
Well, Waterloo used to be known as Berlin.
Oh, right.
But they changed its name in the 1940s, funnily enough. So
you were looking at gold discovery there?
I was doing my master's in gold mineralisation up in Kirkland Lake, which is up in the bush. So
is that how the gold is formed, or how you find the gold, or how you get the gold out?
Well, this was a particular type of gold deposit. So this is Archean. So it was 2.6 billion years old deposits that we were looking for.
Yeah, so I actually, which is just horrendous to admit it, because I come from a gold, like a place that was founded because of gold mining. But I don't actually know much about the formation of gold and different type. You were saying on the way in here that there's such a thing as Otago gold.
There is a special type,
I just imagined that gold was gold and it looks the same everywhere.
I guess it's how it's formed. I mean, the stuff we were dealing with is before. I mean, everyone's heard of plate tectonics and the idea that everything's moving around on plates on the planet. This is before even things moved around on the plates in the planet. Right. Things just used to sag. They used to just
from the weight of the earth.
Weight of the rock on the earth, and it was still warm, and it used to just sag down.
So right back when the earth was cooling down,
2,600 million years ago.
Wow! So that is a lot of zeros. Yes. 2,600 million.
2.6 with 9 noughts after it.
Wow!
Yes.
That is so that's when that gold formed. And that's
all.
Is that true for all gold or just that gold?
No. So that's some of the oldest deposits. Right. Other stuff that you get is like South African gold. A lot of the gold in South Africa is alluvial.
Right.
So they found that in rivers. You find nuggets, and people are sort of familiar with that from Wild West and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's here. Originally, that's where the original gold was found in Tuapeka, which is a river just out of Lawrence there, and they had big nuggets, and then they were sluicing for it, panning for the gold, and then of course also digging for it once they found the vein that was going down.
And that's the commonest way that people found gold. Originally.
It's by following the alluvial gold to the source.
And then, of course, it developed and people understood a bit more about geology.
So how is gold formed?
Well, in this case, the stuff I'm familiar with is what we call hydrothermal gold.
Right.
So it's hot water, basically. It's hydro water, thermal heated.
Right.
So you've got hot water coming up from the centre, well, not from the centre of the Earth, but heated by the core of the Earth, which is superheated. Allows the hot water to rise. It's got minerals dissolved in it because of the high temperature, high pressure. It dissolves lots of minerals in it that it wouldn't normally dissolve in water.
Right. So is that just gold dissolved in water, or is the gold made from something else?
No, the gold will be primordial gold.
Right.
So it will be gold that is just...
And somehow it gets all lumped together and concentrated into a vein.
As things come up, it'll be the main thing that it'll precipitate out when the water cools a bit. Things have to come out of solution because it's got too cool.
Right.
Main thing will be quartz, which is why you always find all the minerals in quartz veins and things like that.
And that's true of Central Otago as well.
Yeah.
There's great big quartz crushers up there.
Yeah, and you tend to find the quartz will move up a fracture, it'll move down faults or things like that. So it infills that, and as it cools down, all the minerals that were in the solution, they can't stay in the solution anymore, so they have to come out and they form different minerals.
Sort of get attracted to each other, do they? And that's how you get veins of it?
Well, yeah, but because it cools at different rates, you'll get different minerals coming out at different times. So that's why you don't just get a gold deposit. You'll get gold, and it might have some lead mixed in with it. It might have some zinc, things like that.
And is it those different bits of minerals that are in with the gold that allows you to say where it's from? You were talking about Otago gold versus...
Yeah, Otago gold is famous because it's a certain age. Now, you'll have to excuse me. I forget my good old geology days from about 30-odd years ago.
Yes. And the listeners will excuse because, as per usual, I've given Jeremy like 10 minutes notice that he was doing this interview. And our producer's laughing because I asked him yesterday if there was a slot.
Right.
Sorry,
so,
Jeremy.
Yeah, no problem. So, I think it's more sort of dinosaur era gold in Otago. I'm not entirely sure, but it's a lot younger.
Right.
A lot younger type deposit, but it forms the same way. It's in quartz veins.
Yeah.
It's minerals coming out, settling in quartz veins. They will get eroded, they'll end up in rivers. People have found the original quartz in the river, and then people have understood quite where it all comes from, how the minerals were formed. Then you start seeing people develop shafts and digging underground because they know where it's going to be.
And I guess they're following...
They will follow a seam.
A seam.
So they'll be following quartz. Where I come from in County Durham, the big thing there was lead zinc mines.
Right.
The earliest lead zinc mines sitting around. And they used to follow veins of quartz. And in that case, it was calcite that they were forming through the limestone. So that's mainly limestone, and they were following calcite mineral veins.
Right.
Through there.
Because I think of County Durham as coal.
It's very famous for its coal.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's from Durham to the coast is coal, and from Durham inland is all limestone, carboniferous limestone.
And of course, famous for the limestone plants there. Famous in biological
famous for
botany
you.
terms.
Yes, yeah. And famous on the coast.
Right.
So you've got the coast as well, the Permian limestones out on the coast, which have very, very unique grasslands and things like that, and very unique fauna.
That's quite often with plants. They follow, because of course if you've got calcium very limestone, you've got a very alkaline soil, so that it's quite...
Best thing to start with before you become an ecologist is start as a geologist. Then you know where everything is, and then you go, oh, that's sitting on top. Oh, that's
I usually just suggest that people take a first year geology course at the same time and then sort of figure out... Because that's what I did as an undergraduate. I just took a whole bunch of first year courses, and then I think then you know... in sort of the bounds of things, but then you get an idea of what you really find. I think that that's the advice I would give to any first year student or someone over the holidays who's thinking, what should I do? Just do as many different courses as you can.
No, I mean, we used to run quite from the university, and then later on at the research institute, we'd run lots of events for school kids who were just coming up to finishing off, well, in the UK it would have been A-levels at that time, and then saying, oh, what should I do for university? Should I do this? Should I do that? Yeah. And you'd explain all the options that were available as a geologist. If you start doing geology, then you can do everything from engineering, you can do ecology, you can do geography type things.
Yeah,
it's great stuff.
It makes a great double degree as well.
Yes,
because it goes so nicely with things. So that was your masters.
So I did a masters out in gold exploration. Then I had to come back to the UK. And thought, right, okay, saw an advert. It was with the United Kingdom Atomic Energy Authority and the Swiss radioactive waste disposal people. Oh. Okay, gone a bit off piste here, but it's a company called NAGRA. And so it was to do a PhD in Cambridge linked to the Swiss waste disposal company and the UK, because at the time, everyone was accumulating lots of radioactive waste.
Yeah,
everyone's going, what the hell, from nuclear power stations. And going, what are we going to do with it?
Right. So what do they do with it? Because, of course, we don't have nuclear power stations here.
They talk about what they're going to do with it still.
Right.
Just to jump ahead a few years, I ended up working with a consultant, when I was at a West Lakes Research Institute, which is in Cumbria. Many people might have heard of Sellafield, Seascale, out on the Cumbrian coast. It's the biggest nuclear power plant in the UK. Right. And they were looking at where to actually have a repository for the nuclear waste disposal.
Right.
So the UK government have had 3 goes at trying to decide where to put it.
So they're still looking at where to put it as opposed to what to do.
I think they've decided on what they call a geological disposal.
Right. So
which is to bury underground.
Right.
In engineered facility.
Right.
Which will be sealed for probably about a million and a half years.
So how does one actually do that? Like, what's the mechanism for actually sealing?
Right. Most of it's in concrete.
Right.
Most of it they'll put in concrete or
How do they make sure that water doesn't seep through it?
By finding the right geology, which is the key thing, which is where I got into my other part of geochemistry. So moved on from geochemistry into it's a bit Germanic, but it's HydroGeoChemistry. So it's water geochemistry.
Why is that Germanic?
Because Germans love to put loads of words together.
Oh, right.
You start off with the word geology, and then you add the word geochemistry, and then you add hydrogeochemistry. And you go, oh, right. So, this was the second time they were doing it. They hired me as the government's consultant to find to run it down from a series of sites. They had about 6 or 7 sites in the UK.
Right, so you want to find the site that's the most stable?
You're finding it geological stable. So they were, in the second series, they were looking globally.
Right,
they
so you don't
everywhere
want
in the world.
You don't want a site anywhere in New Zealand because it's all subject to earthquakes.
You don't want that. You don't want anywhere in the Middle East because it's politically unstable.
Right.
So they were wanting political stability, geological stability. And
assuming that it's going to stay politically stable for 1.5 million years.
Yeah, and it will. I mean, where we were planning to put it, we had at least 1.5 million plus years before any water would even get in and start moving it.
Right.
So that's what I did my PhD on, was looking at the movement of radioactivity from natural mineral deposits. So it was a uranium vein in Germany.
Right.
And we looked at the movement of some of the radioactivity in there. And under natural system, just bound up in quartz and things like that.
Right.
We found it had moved about 5-6 millimetres in 200 million years.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So
that's a long time for not much movement.
That's going to be fairly safe if it moves.
I mean, assuming nobody does anything human-wise to upset it.
And that's a lot of the investigations were to make sure that nobody in 1 million years' time drilled into it by accident and went, oh, look.
So how do you stop people drilling into it? Like, how do you make something that in 1 million years' time people are going to know it's still there and not drill into it? You put lead around it so it's detectable with a...
Well, I mean, a lot of these deposits, you would wonder why you're drilling through so much concrete and copper casings and lots of layers and barriers. So it's like in a barrel, in a cased area, in concrete, in a geological cavern, in this and the other. So
it sounds very expensive.
Oh, it is.
It
is.
And how much?
Billions.
Oh, sorry, I've got completely distracted on this nuclear waste. How much nuclear waste is there? Is it like over a year they produce, I don't know, a little bit, a truckload, and it just is a long time that you want to have this deposit for.
Yeah, I'm thinking Sellafield contains, I don't think I'm giving anything away here now. No, something like 95% of the UK's nuclear waste is in one particular area.
Right, and that's still got space to fill up, or it's filled up?
They're storing it on at the moment. It all gets stored until someone has come up with a disposal methodology.
And why is it so difficult?
Because you have to give a guarantee, which is very difficult to do. Give a 1 million a year guarantee.
No, and why is it so difficult?
But you've got to guarantee that nobody's going to.
No, not the storage. Why is it so difficult to actually make it safe?
It's not difficult to make safe. I mean, you can...
Not the storage, but the actual, so you don't have to store it and just wait for it. Just make it not radioactive.
Oh, really, it's just the natural decay of radioactive material.
So there's no option, you just have to wait.
Yes, it just keeps...
You can't make something not radioactive.
Oh, well, it will do, but it takes... In the case of most of the stuff that we use for reactors and things like that, it takes something like 1 to 2 million years.
Yeah, but there's no way of short tracking that and just speeding it up?
You can't speed it up. No, it's just natural decay.
Right.
I mean, you've heard of things like atomic clock.
Yeah, no.
And that works on the decay process. So it's just the element itself is breaking down, which is why it's radioactive. It's actively breaking down from one substance to another. So uranium eventually will break itself down to make lead.
Right.
And it'll be non-radioactive lead when it's done it, but that will take millions of years.
So this cedar field will be a massive lead deposit eventually?
It would be if they didn't actually eventually find somewhere to dispose of the material. But
what other option is there of disposing of it?
Well, people have looked at all sorts of things. People say, why don't you shoot it into space, which seems to be an answer for most people. Elon Musk probably thinks it's a good idea.
Shoot it into space.
But then, we've always said, well, if you shoot into space, you saw with Challenger, unfortunately, the spacecraft blew up on takeoff.
Yeah.
If it blows up on takeoff and it's full of radioactive material, you've got an airburst nuclear bomb above the planet.
Right.
So nobody's ever thought that was a great idea. A lot of the other ideas was stick it in the deep ocean.
That seems like a really bad idea.
Well, no, but if you put it in the deep ocean near a subduction plate, which is where the plates on the Earth go down back into the Earth.
Oh, right, so it gets sucked back down into the middle of the Earth.
Down into the Earth. It'll reform with the radioactive core of the Earth, and jobs are good 'un.
All right, so why don't we do that?
That's still an option. Trouble is, we end up with things like earthquakes. You'll know all about that. So if you have an earthquake, you might have fractures and fissures open up back up to the surface, so the radioactivity may be put back up into the ocean.
So you don't just get an earthquake, you get a radioactive earthquake.
You would have radioactive water coming from deep and within the Earth. The water will move back up into the oceans.
Right. So if it was put into one of these subduction zones, and how long would it then take for it to go back down into the core, theoretically?
Well, if you're looking at the mid-Atlantic ridge, which is where the Earth comes up and starts moving out, that's about 10 to 20 centimetres a year, I think, is the movement on that.
Oh, right.
So it would take you an awful long time for it to get to any reasonable depth.
Right. So
you want to be looking at it 1 to 2 kilometres deep.
Right.
You want it to get down to that sort of level before.
And that's obviously a difficult place to drill, is it? And then just sort of
And
pump
people
it in.
have always worried about the fact that if you put the radioactive waste in there, everyone wants it retrievable in case something goes wrong. And of course, you can't get it back. If you put it in a geological repository, you can always get it back.
Right.
If the calculations you've made aren't quite right.
But they wouldn't be not right, would they?
Science isn't infallible, is it?
Well, it's just
Speaking as a scientist, I know it's not infallible.
I mean, there's just always other variables, isn't there, that you may not have known, and you're doing your best guess at the time.
Yeah.
You're working with the numbers that you've got, and when it's real life, there's always
And you don't get more of an emotive subject than radioactivity.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So that's why I moved on from that.
Yeah, no, it is. It's quite a tricky, but it's quite interesting. Sorry for drilling you on it.
Yeah,
but
that's okay.
It's kind of that thing that you sort of think, because New Zealand's obviously got a long history of anti-nuclear, and we don't have nuclear power here.
Yeah.
And there's always people who say, the dams up places, that's bad for things, and coal's bad for things, and there's all these things that everything's sort of bad for things. Even if you've got solar power, you're getting
which is why you try and make it as sustainable as you can. You can never achieve 100%,
yeah,
but you try and make it the least damaging option, and that's the best you can do. But it just requires you to think it through and look at it and go, yeah, nothing's, any interference that humans do on the planet is going to cause some sort of change.
Yeah,
so
the fact that there's 9 billion of us is...
Yeah, so you've just got to look at it and go, okay, what's the least damaging option? Right, well, we'll go with that for the moment. If someone comes up with something better...
Right.
So, at the UK, they've closed down all the coal mines now.
Yeah.
So they still had 100 years worth of coal to mine out, but they've closed all that down now. So everything's now looking at, well, they seem to be looking at solar and wind and everything else.
Like tidal and wind and solar, there's the minerals involved in the battery and the storage of it.
Which is huge. You look at the battery, just to make batteries for cars. Everyone says, electric cars, great idea. You want to see the destruction that causes in Africa for the digging up what they call rare earth elements, which are actual...
That's the lithium
lithium and lots of the other elements that they need, not necessarily lithium, but they need all the rare earth elements to go with it. And that's why a lot of the deposits are sitting there in Africa and what have you, and everyone's looking to exploit those. But that's why everyone's opening up things like old lithium mines. You've got lots of old waters coming out of mines which contain lithium.
Old waters?
It's the water that's coming out of the mine. So a mine gets flooded. When it gets disused, it will get flooded. And the water in there will dissolve some of the minerals.
Just because there's water in the ground?
There's always water in the ground.
Right.
No, it's just a question of drilling deep enough.
Right.
So, that was one of the other things that we went looking for with one of my other companies, was phosphate, which is used for fertiliser. So I moved on from the radioactive waste to phosphate. But the phosphate mine we found, which is based in North Yorkshire in middle of a national park, actually, is 1.2 kilometres underground.
Wow.
So it's going to be one of the deepest mines around in the world.
Yeah.
40 degrees all year round.
Wow.
So, and all the miners have to drink, 10 litres of water a day, sort of thing.
Hot.
It is. It is.
Why is it so hot?
Because every kilometre you go underground is 25 degrees increase in temperature from surface temperature.
Because you're getting closer to the core.
Because that's the natural temperature profile for the Earth.
Wow, I didn't know that either. Did you know that, Dommy? I didn't know that.
So if you go into any mine, you go underground in a mine, it'll be
hotter.
That's why miners, can go down in their T-shirts and happily dig away and then come back up and have to put everything back on. That's mining in Canada.
Because it's funny, isn't it? Like you go into a cave, it's usually cooler.
It's cooler in the cave, yeah, but
it's just right
you're
on
not
the
very
surface.
deep. You're not that deep in a cave.
Funny, isn't it?
But if you go down in a mine, certainly at 1.2 kilometres, it'll be warm down there.
Wow.
So we were drilling down there.
25 degrees for every kilometre?
25 degrees every kilometre, on average.
On average? Wow.
Some areas are hotter. New Zealand will be warmer because you've got geothermal heat.
Right.
So if you're in a geothermal area, obviously it's a lot faster.
Right, because it's closer to the...
Yeah, it's quick temperature rise, because you've got heat naturally stored underground.
Right.
So if you did the same in Iceland, my other favourite place to go and visit, then it'll be a lot hotter.
It'll be a lot hotter because there's also geothermal there.
Yeah, lots of geothermal.
Yeah. And geothermal is a great source of energy, surely.
It is. That was considered...
Because it's continuous, right?
Yeah, one of the first ones was actually in the UK.
Yeah.
In Southampton. That's now beginning to drop in temperature, so they can't do it.
Why would it drop in temperature? Is the Earth getting cooler?
Just simply because you're pumping the warm water out and cooler water is coming back in. So, like everything,
so they're just
you're taking it out.
pumping too much hot water out. It's not able to keep warming it up.
Not too much. You're taking it out quicker than it heats up.
Then it heats up.
Yeah.
Presumably, if you slow down pumping out, the water would be slower. It would be heated up more.
Yeah.
And if you just stopped for, I don't know, 5 years or something, everything
it might
would
recover.
get hot.
It might come back up again. So, but yeah, lots
So
of
it's
people
kind of
looked at that. I mean, there was one project we looked at in the Channel Islands. They wanted to, for all their greenhouses, they have loads of greenhouses.
Right.
Most of the
So
salad in the
that's
UK
like Jersey and Guernsey.
and Guernsey and
Right.
things like that. They had tomato houses, massive, great tomato houses, and they were looking to see how can we heat them more sustainably, cheaper, etc. So they were looking for geothermal
Do they have
energy.
geothermal in the Channel Islands?
If you drill deep enough, you will do. But
Well, I suppose if you drill deep enough anyway, it's going to get
Yes.
geothermal, right?
So
'Cause that's the nature of a ball that's hot in the middle.
But that was the job we were. Is it hotter, quicker down there, or is it just sort of the same? And you're going to have to go 3 kilometres underground to get the right water.
And what was the answer? Can you grow tomatoes from geothermal? No.
No. Well, it wasn't going to work for them.
It's not
anyway.
economical, basically. It costs
No.
too much to dig too deep.
No. I mean, we've tried it in the northeast as well, because a lot of stuff nowadays,
Yeah.
you've heard about the UK coal mines and
Yeah.
that they've closed those down.
Yeah.
Well, of course, a lot of the coal mines were deep structures,
Oh, yeah.
and they are flooded with warm water.
Oh, right.
So there's an awful lot of schemes to pump water out of old coal mines and use it for regional heating schemes.
Right. Does that not just have, like, lots of weird minerals and
Yes.
things in it that makes the water quite toxic?
Funnily enough, though, lots of things that are in coal and coal ash are rare earth element minerals.
Oh, right.
Just the sort of thing that you need for making
So could you
new
just
batteries.
take the water out and then kind of precipitate out all the
A
useful
lot of what
elements?
you do, yes. The
and
main
then
thing
use
is
the
iron.
heat to do like that.
Yeah, the main thing's iron, because if you go into a coal mine, you'll find there's lots of there's a mineral pyrite. It's the mineral fool's gold.
Right, pyrite.
So it's iron sulfide. So you end up with acid mine drainage, which is the famous thing there. So you've got acidic waters. They're down to about pH of 2.
Oh, that's quite acidic,
So you
isn't
think,
it?
vinegar's pH 4.
Yeah.
And every time you go down one more unit, it's another log scale down.
Yeah.
So it's 2 scales down from vinegar.
Yeah, so it's a lot. And a log, just for
You
those
dip your
out there,
finger
a
in it.
log scale is...
Is every 1,000. So it multiplies 1,000 times each time you're going down on a log scale.
Yeah. So
So if you dip your finger in it, basically it'll start dissolving.
yeah, no, that's really acid.
That is really acid. You don't want to be anywhere near that.
But
stuff.
if it's really acid, that means there's lots of hydrogen just floating around freely, right? So then can you not use the hydrogen to make hydrogen power?
You'd think so. No.
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 I mean, obviously, I don't know anything about geology. Just
Yeah, no, it
Strikes me that
it doesn't
this-
quite work out like that. But no, I mean, a lot of the iron there is. I mean, we end up with mines discharging water into sort of local watercourses, and the water it's called ochre because it is bright red.
right, because of the iron in it.
because of the levels of iron and iron sulfate in
Right.
it, and the pH.
And the pH, right?
Yeah.
And I imagine that just kills everything.
So yes, and
because it's
that's
too
one
acid
of the
in
problems
it.
we
And
had.
also, warm water is bad because fish can't breathe in it, right? So there's just like
Yeah, and it also precipitates out on the river, forms a sort of a muddy sludge, and then the fish have nowhere for any larvae,
yeah.
anything else. So
Yeah, so yes,
all your food source dead, so the fish die.
yeah. There's all this. Cause, I mean,
So everything's connected.
yeah, and it's funny because I used to work in an office that was part ecologists and part geologists, and we sort of had this naive impression of the geologists. And my co-host, who's not here, will kick me for saying this, but she's not here, so I'm going to say it anyway. We sort of had this naive impression of geologists as being in sort of two groups. They're either like natural hazards, earthquakes and things, slips, landslides, sort of fixing people.
Engineering geology.
Yeah, or they're digging for gold and oil and coal and riches of one sort or another.
And now you have them. I mean, I was involved in the UK when they had the foot and mouth in 2000. We were doing a lot of the work there to look at the burial sites for all the cattle that they'd done, making sure that the disposals of the cattle didn't feed into local waterways, that there were safe disposals because they were all buried in pits.
Yeah. See, that's interesting because it's kind of a part of geology that I've never really thought about. But it's that whole idea of knowing what the structure of the bedrock below the soil layer is, I guess.
And how much it can contain water. Will water get in? Will it take something out? And will it move stuff around? Will it move pollution around?
Because I guess different rocks are differently porous, so the water goes through them, or it doesn't, or it goes round them, or they have like cracks in them so that it goes through them.
That was my last job amongst mates. So after the potash mine, I ended up working for the local water company.
Potash is the same as
potash mine. Yeah,
the phosphorus.
It's the fertilizer.
Right. Yeah, because in New Zealand,
fertilizer.
I guess fertilizer for a long time came in the form of superphosphate from bird.
Yes.
Poo, basically, from Nauru, which I don't want to even think about what did to Nauru as the island itself, because the island was basically just mined away, and that was kind of dusted up and sprayed all over the hills here to make
but your potash was that was a unique deposit. So it's a deposit that spreads from the UK all under the North Sea and pops out just on the edge of Holland.
Right.
So that's the size of the deposit.
What makes that in the original deposit?
These are what they call evaporite deposits. So think of somewhere like the Saharan Desert where you've got great pools of lagoons of water. Yeah. They're confined pool of water. The sun will make the evaporation. It will slowly but surely take the water away and leaves all the minerals in the water getting more and more and more concentrated up. And then eventually you'll get some of the minerals that come out are going to be things like potash.
Right.
And
that's the potassium.
That was the potassium. So what we were after was called polyhalite. So it was a mixture of potassium, calcium, sodium. So it was all the elements that you wanted for plant growth.
Right.
In one. So they're actually looking at it now and just crush the rock up, throw it on the ground. Job's a good one. So you don't even have to process it.
Wow.
So it's an Australian who actually initially funded it. He put in £1 million to have a look to see if anything was there. At the last count, it was worth 10 billion.
God, that's crazy money, isn't it?
Yeah, but it was 200-metre thick band of this mineral. We found, it's 200 metres deep.
What kind of a lake must that have been in the first place?
Yeah.
And going from the UK, so I guess that's... And then going...
Under the North Sea to Holland.
Under the North Sea to Holland. So that would have been... How long ago was that put down? I mean, that would have been when that was kind of...
Yeah, just at the very early stages of dinosaurs coming out. So Permian. It's Permian. It's known as the Zetstein. So it's a lot of what formed a lot of the traps for the North Sea oil.
Oh, right,
So they knew quite a bit about this
because that was my next question. Is like it's sort of similar to oil and coal because that's plants.
Yeah.
That the carbon in coal, the carbon in oil came from plants originally, and there's the whole Carboniferous.
As long as it got buried deep enough.
And then exactly. So then you have this massive explosion of plants. Put a whole lot of carbon into plants.
Hence the Carboniferous.
Carboniferous, exactly. They all die, and then you get pressure on top of them, or you get them all, at the bottom of a lake or something, and that you get these deposits. And then I was thinking, so why do some places you get coal and oil, and some places you get potash?
Whatever survives, because whatever gets put down can get lifted back up again. It gets eroded away, gets taken away. So that stuff's all gone. It gets sort of recycled back.
So why does if it's just the plants that are making the potash, why is it not?
So it wasn't the plants. No, it's not. It's not plants. No. This is the water. So the water's becoming more concentrated in minerals.
Right. So the water just had a lot of potassium.
Out.
The water just had a lot of potassium in it to start with.
Yeah, it just precipitated out and formed minerals. And one of the last minerals that was formed was this polyhalite, which is a multiple salts. So that's all polyhalite means. Yeah. So so that was one of the major deposits that's been found. So it's been developed.
And I guess that's why, being a geologist, it's kind of you're just looking for the pattern of different things at different times and what was put down and how that.
Yeah, I mean, as we say, you have some good ideas, some good theories. You go, well, we should find this here. What is the only way you can have a look is to drill a hole in it and have a look to see what's actually there. So we thought there's going to be a lot of polyhalite in this particular area, but we didn't know until we drilled the boreholes.
So why did you think it was going to be lots of polyhalite?
Well, back in the 1930s, BP did a lot of drilling around there looking for oil.
Right.
And so a lot of people, when they drill a borehole, will record the rocks that they've got and they find.
Even if they're not what they're looking for.
Yeah, and you can look through those historic records and go,
that's good science, isn't it?
Yeah.
Recording stuff, even if you don't know that it's what you're looking for.
If it's not what you're after, but somebody else might be interested.
Just collecting all the data.
Yeah. And so it's famous in the area. We know there's a lot of these evaporite deposits.
Right.
So, I mean, limestone's another. The chalk is that sort of deposit. It's formed out of water. Well, the chalk's a bit different. That's actually formed from little creatures.
From all the little creatures with the shells.
But limestone reefs and things like that will be formed from the evaporation of water. You can create limestone reefs and things from the evaporation of water.
Oh, right.
And that's what this area was famous for, has the limestone underneath it. So you're right, you're looking for patterns, you're looking for certain things, you're looking for rocks of a certain age, knowing during the Permian.
How old rocks are?
You date them with the radioactivity in them.
Right.
Which was another job I used to do.
Yeah. So how does that work? Just go into that, explain that for us, how that works.
Okay, so you're looking at a mineral that you're probably a good resistant mineral, something like a zircon or something like that. Right. Some minerals that won't dissolve.
So zircon is famously a fake diamond, right?
It's a fake diamond, but it's also a natural mineral.
Right. I say a fake diamond because it looks like a diamond and you get diamond rings.
And you get zirconium
that are cheaper because there's zirconium.
Yes. But you're looking for a mineral that won't dissolve in water because it's in the ground, so obviously there's water moving around. So you don't want it to have any of the radioactivity taken out of it.
Right.
So when it formed, it would have had natural uranium formed as part of the zircon.
Right.
And then because it's natural uranium, it will decay at a certain rate and change into lead. So you measure the amount of uranium, amount of lead, and by looking at the balance between the two, say, right, well, this has been in the ground for X million years, radioactive dating. So you can do it with carbon-14 was one of the other...
Yeah, so carbon-14 only works with things that have got carbon in them, right?
Yes, yeah, you've got to have carbon in them. So that was one of the things that we measured before was the Turin shroud.
Right.
So we measured the Turin shroud to see what age that particular.
Yeah. I'm just going to repeat that for those out there who are dialectically challenged. I think what Jeremy's saying is the Turin shroud.
Yes.
As in the shroud of Christ.
That's the one.
That was found in Turin, a little town in Italy.
Yes.
Yeah.
We were given one piece of cotton from it to
That's pretty cool.
To come up with the date.
Was
it? It wasn't the date we came up with. But carbon-14 is renowned for being not really... there can be a lot of things can go wrong with the date, but we ended up with the date in medieval.
What was the shroud made of? Was it linen or cotton?
It was linen. Or cotton and something of that.
Right, which is obviously plant
material. We were given one strand.
Right.
And
one thread.
One thread. One bit of a thread.
Right.
And
I mean, fair enough. It is the...
Yes, I mean...
Possibly the shroud.
You can't go around,
chopping off big swatches.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yes, that was one of the things that we got to
And so you carbon dated it to sort of the medieval. So
we got it to medieval, but we did know that it was potentially older.
Right.
It's just that we'd had, the carbon-14 had, in a way, it's like resetting the clock. So the clock had got reset in the medieval times. So,
how does that happen?
Well,
if it's died again?
It may be that if it's been subject to heat or something like that, so some of the carbon may have been changed and altered. All sorts of things.
Sorry, I'll just go back. Medieval was like
1500s.
Yeah. Just to clarify out there. So we're a little bit later than the proposed Jesus Christ, which was like sort of somewhere between
1,500 years late.
Yeah.
It should be zero AD.
Between 0 and 43, I guess.
Yes.
I don't know.
Something like that.
Depending on how long we think he lived. Right.
But yeah, so that.
So I didn't realise that there was.
So that's another thing geologists end up getting to do is measure the Turin shroud to finding gold mines to doing everything.
So did they take? Yeah. I mean, at that point they must have taken a few threads and or just cut up one thread and sent them to different labs.
They sent it to different labs around the world.
What other people got.
And people came up with different ages.
Yeah.
Some people came up with the age that they were expecting, and some labs didn't. So again, it can depend on a number of things. It can even be the process of preparing the sample for measurement.
Right.
Because you actually have to turn the carbon in the shroud had to be turned effectively into benzene.
Oh, right.
So then you measured that in the counter. So that process in itself can actually cause some of the uncertainty and problems in how you come up with a date.
It's interesting, eh? Do you know how many different labs did the same?
No, I don't know. It was a blind. We weren't allowed to know what each other were doing.
Oh, right.
Otherwise, you might phone them up and go, what number did you get?
So you didn't know that you were doing the shrouded trend?
Oh, no, we didn't even know what we were dealing with.
Oh, right. You just got a sample and said carbon date this.
I just ran the lab.
Oh, wow, that's so crazy.
I wasn't told.
Yeah, because otherwise you'd be thinking, I've got something wrong here. I want to get it to zero, right?
You'd be,
Yeah, so it's like a double
you'd be really worried
test.
about don't get it wrong.
Wow.
You've only got, a centimetre of thread.
Wow.
It was something weird because, we had various people from the government would come round and ask us to measure all sorts of weird and wonderful things like, what makes this wine taste so good, and why is this wine that's only 5 years old? Why is it? Yeah, a weird thing for a geologist to do is measuring wine and finding out how much sorbitol, the sugars that they put in wine,
right.
and because our dear friends in the House of Lords were saying, why is this wine? It's not aged, but it tastes like a wine that should be 20 years old. Why is that? Go and ask the scientist at the Atomic Energy Authority. They'll give you an answer. What? So so we worked out why His Lordship's wine was tasting so good.
Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? God. They're crazy things.
Yeah, see, you did say you've had a varied career. Well,
it is quite. Eventually you ended up at the University of Sunderland. I think that's where I first came across you. You were working.
Yeah, I was working at Sunderland. That was 3 jobs ago.
Right. It's been a while.
I know it's been a while. It's been a while since we met up. So yeah, I did that. As I say, I ended up working for the consultancy. We're doing the radioactive waste disposal and the mine, looking for the mine, and then ended up with our local water company. Looking at water resources in...
so that's looking at how to...
groundwater.
That's looking at groundwater. And making sure that it's drinkable.
It was drinkable, but we had the biggest problem was up near Berwick, up near the Scottish border, nitrates.
Oh, right.
Because you're allowed 15 milligrams per litre nitrate in water before you get blue baby syndrome.
Oh, what's blue baby syndrome?
Is it hypoxia? Yes, it's hypoxia.
Sounds like
so if you give it to a newborn baby, this water, they will go hypoxic.
Wow, because there's too much nitrogen.
It's the World Health, too much nitrate.
Not enough
in
oxygen
the water.
can get into their blood because it's taken over with nitrogen.
Yeah, and it's the World Health Organisation has set the limit at 50 milligrams per litre for drinking water supply.
God, that's interesting.
And we had 40-something
right on the edge
coming in because it's a big agricultural area.
Yeah,
and it was
and
all
that's
the fertiliser.
Putting too much fertiliser, and that's a big push in New Zealand at the moment, is for riparian edges. So basically putting lots of plantings between the agriculture, which is generally it's dairy cows, in this country at least, because they're concentrated.
Chickens in the UK.
Oh yeah,
that's our problem.
Yeah. So here it's generally cows, dairy cows, and it's a massive amount of fertiliser because they want green grass so they can keep producing lots of. And we have this weird thing where we have cows in the driest part in the Canterbury Plains, in the driest part of the country, and cows famously, in order to produce milk, need a lot of water. So it's a bit of a dumb thing to start with. But anyway, so we're verging on politics there. But that aside,
we also had to make sure that the water, as the water company, the amount we were taking out was sustainable, so that the amount of water that went into the aquifer was more than what we as a water company took out. But we still had to supply the people in the area with drinking water, and it was only had groundwater as a source of water for all the people in the area, which is about 750,000 people.
Yeah, it's interesting because Berwick, there's a tiny little town just inland from Dunedin here that's called Berwick, which I imagine is named after Berwick, but
okay,
total different scale of population though.
Yeah, so Berwick is the one you'll know because it's the one that sits right on the Scottish border.
Right.
So it's famous for it's sort of been the last town or last place that you get to from England
before you go
into Scotland.
Right.
But yeah, that was part of our area. That and Sunderland drinking water. But that didn't have the nitrate problem, that had the coal mining problem.
Right.
So you had water coming into or mine water coming into the drinking water in Sunderland, and then you had nitrate water coming in
Berwick. So what do you do about that?
Have very long-term strategies.
Yeah.
So we know
and
it's going to take...
And I guess big-scale category.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of it's information for farmers, making sure that farmers understand the implications of what they're doing.
Because, of course, it's no use to them having the nitrate in the water either, because it means that they're paying for nitrate. That's not going into the chickens or the cows or whatever. It doesn't
go in the grass, it just goes straight in the ground.
And it's running off into the water. So it's actually...
It's more cost-effective for them to actually use it properly.
To actually use... And I think that there was a big study in the Netherlands that had just come out when I was in the UK where they had decreased they put limits or something, they decreased the amount of nitrogen that was going on farms, and they'd got it down to a level that there wasn't any they were just so finely tuned because it's very intensive farming there that it wasn't going into the riparian streams, but they weren't actually losing any productivity because they were monitoring exactly where it was, how much was going in, and getting it to the point where it was exactly balanced. What was
going in was
what was enough to make the growth, but without any excess.
So that was part of a study we were involved with every European country that was around the North Sea. We were all doing nitrate studies and sharing knowledge and information about it.
Because that just made, I was just amazed at it. I thought, that's so obvious. And it's such a win-win for everyone because obviously we don't want, for the environment, but also for the water source and swimming and everything else that just goes crazy when you put too much nitrogen in it. But also, if you're putting the nitrogen in as fertiliser, it's costing you to put it on.
So
you're actually just money. That knowledge of knowing exactly where and how much.
Yeah. So we funded PhD students and things like that. I supervised a lot of students who were looking at the balance and different crops, how much the crop took up, how much fertiliser it needed to improve it, to how much to increase the yield.
So
the world record is actually up near Berwick for the number of... I think it was corn per hectare, and because he literally threw as much fertiliser at it as he could.
Right. Just to see what would happen.
Just to see what would happen.
Yeah, because that's an interesting point. It depends what plant you're planting there, how much nitrogen it can use before it's too much.
Yeah.
Because everything eventually becomes toxic if there's too much of it, regardless of what it is.
So, that was all part of that sort of working with other scientists and agriculturalists at Newcastle University School of Agriculture.
Yeah. And sort of balancing...
multidisciplinary studies.
And it's really interesting because it's kind of getting that trade-off of all sorts of different variables, like what plant and where it is and what the temperature and rainfall of the area is.
Changing rainfall.
What they're using the crops for, and getting that all balanced so that you're actually, and the more you can kind of tinker with all those different variables.
I mean, we had to make predictions for how the rainfall is going to change in the area and therefore how much, because you'll get less input into the water, in effect, you're increasing the level of nitrate because you're not diluting it down anymore.
Right.
So what impact is that going to have? And is that going to knock it over the balance?
And that's tricky as well when you've got rivers like climate change here in New Zealand is where we are now. Otago is predicted to have both higher and lower rainfall. So it's the intensity of the event because we're a small island in the middle of an ocean. Sometimes we get more intense rainfall events, so we get lots of flooding, but then some years we just get no rain, and then we get droughts as well.
The UK's doing exactly the same thing.
And it's this weird thing where you've got the same place and the prediction is you will get both droughts and more floods, and people go, that just doesn't make sense. But of course that's the way weather works, right?
And that's how we model it, is what's the worst case drought event we could have, what's the worst case rainfall event we have, and looking at the potential impacts through groundwater models, doing the whole thing, everything from what falls out the sky to what you pump out the ground, trying to look at that whole pattern.
It's interesting. And of course there must be a humanities side to that as well, because it's all it's not just the climate and the plants, it's the people and what the people are doing on top of all of that. So it's that whole socio-economic thing of what people are eating, what produce they're wanting, if they're wanting dairy, if they're wanting more grains, if there's just more people. And
building housing estates and they want more water. So where's that water going to come from?
Yeah,
so you've got a housing estate and you're increasing the population by 100,000 in an area. Where do you get all the water from for all the amenities, the fire service, this, that, and the other?
That is amazing. Hey, and it's really good, like just right now, well, while it's topical, talking about the balance of science and humanities and how much they rely on each other and even in something that you think is very pure like geology.
Yeah.
But everything is that balance of getting everything all together.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeremy, it has been fantastic catching up with you and thank you very much for coming along.
Okay.
And I hope you enjoy the rest of your stay in Dunedin and
certainly will.
Up to Oamaru there and check out some of those beautiful stones along the way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ka kite. You've been listening to the OI Podcast, the shout out for the arts, sciences and mataranga Māori.
You can support this podcast by becoming a member of the OI. Check out the Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences on Facebook or our website.
If you'd like to listen again to this episode or others from the series, look for the OI Podcast on OAR FM's website, oar.org.nz.
Brought to you by the Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences, the Otago branch of the Royal Society of New Zealand.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.